Welcome back to AM Prime, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to welcome back to the program once more as we continue the conversations the President of the Trinidad and Tobago National Council of Parent Teachers Association, and we know them as the NPTA, Mr. Walter Stewart. Good morning, sir, and welcome back to the program.
Good morning, Keaton. Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago, and of course the wider diaspora. Very good to be back here this morning. Happy Monday, happy productive week to all of you. My name, Walter Stewart, President of the National Parent Teacher Association. On board as well with me is our National PRO, Mrs. Jana Thomas, and also our National Education Officer, Mrs. Ayana Leacock Sargent. This is the second installment of what I would want to refer to as NPTA Spotlight and Focus. And of course, today we are going to delve a bit deeper into some of the issues we started to talk about last week, Monday. I want to start, of course, by looking at what is PTA? Why PTA? How does the PTA function? And lastly, who can get involved in PTA? Public Parent-Teacher Association is designed to work along with schools and learning institutions by providing support and partnership in order to bring about maximum achievement for all our students. In Trinidad and Tobago, there are about close to 800 primary and secondary schools. And our remit is, of course, to ensure that all these schools, apart from being affiliated with the National Parent Teacher Association, to ensure that all these students who all have potential can attain their maximum potential. And this potential, of course, has to be holistic. In other words, we want to ensure that all our students are academically inclined, culturally inclined, physically inclined in terms of sports, and that at the end of the day, they are patriotic and that they're able to contribute significantly and make a great impact as a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. So that all that we do encapsulates those ideals and those objectives as members of the National Parent Teacher Association. As was mentioned last week, we are the oldest and only legally binded organization to advocate for parents, for the communities, and of course for all our children in Trinidad and Tobago. So that our remit transcends not only students, but as I mentioned, families and communities. Last week, of course, I briefed on the constitution of the Trinidad and Tobago National Council of Parent Teacher Association. And the three main goals and objectives of the Trinidad and Tobago National Council of Parent Teacher Association are: one, to promote the welfare of children and young persons at home, school, places of worship, and in the community. Two, to raise the standards of living of children and young persons at home and in the community. And thirdly, to be able to advocate legally and of course to assist in laws that will govern parents, children, and of course members of the community as well. Those are the three main objectives of the Trinidad and Tobago National Council of PTA. And of course there are 9 of them, and of course during these other installments we can look briefly at what the other 6 goals and objectives are. So that is the what of PTA. Why PTA? And PTA is not a trade union, by no means, but of course we advocate for the care, concern, and the interest of all our children, so that we assist in addressing issues that are important to our parents and to our children. That is the why. Being able to address issues pertaining to parents and children. So we advocate, we make our voices heard, and of course we plea and negotiate on behalf of our children. We are, as it were, the watchdog. We are, as it were, the guardians. We are, as it were, the sentinels to ensure that parents and the children get what they are rightly deserving of in the education system in Trinidad and Tobago. How can you get involved in the PTA? One, the PTA constantly recruits members to join the organization that is considered to be the largest advocacy organization for children. How do we do this? The school age for our children is between 5 and 16. That's approximately an 11-year span. If you look at the primary school system, a child comes in at age 5, and really they spend about 7 years in the primary school system. At the secondary school system, the child goes from Form 1 to Form 5, and in some instances to Form 6, where they spend additional 2 years. So in effect, the education life of a child from primary to secondary is about 14 years. All we are asking for you parents is 14 years of dedicated, committed service to the PTA, so that you are able to track and follow the progress of your child from first year to Form 5 and or Form 6 if they take up the CAPE level of education. So the how really is being able to recruit parents from the first year of entering school and being able to maintain that membership from first year to Form 5 or to Form 6. 2, the how. We as parents acknowledge the hard work of our teachers. And of course, we really ought to big up, to use a local colloquial term, our teachers, because they work constantly to ensure that our children get the education that they need. So that we have to really value the work and the efforts of our teachers. And we are doing that as members of our PTA. 3, by seeking the best interest and welfare of all students. There are approximately 200,000 students who leave their homes every day that there is school and go into the school world. We have to ensure that all of these students, bar none, are able to achieve at their maximum potential level, and of course that they do well at the end of their school tenure. And of course, I mentioned this last week and I mentioned it again as to the how, the fundraising aspect of the PTA. Whilst it is not the major issue insofar as PTA membership is concerned, we want to support our schools by ensuring that we raise funds to assist in issues that the schools might be facing and requiring some kind of funding. Lastly, who can be a member of the PTA? Let me shock you. Anyone can be a member of the PTA. You don't have to have a child in the school system to even consider being a member of the PTA unit. As a matter of fact, our Constitution Article 5 says anyone without discrimination can be a member of the PTA once you follow the aims and objectives of the PTA. We want to implore you, a member of the community, a leader in the society, a corporate entity, anyone at all who follows the aims and objectives of the PTA, this is the place for you. So we did the what, we did the why, we did the how, and we did the who. Let me just tell you that this organization is 64 years this year. We started in the public library, Knox Street, Port of Spain, on the 23rd of July, 1960. And we have had 64 unbroken years of PTA life in Trinidad and Tobago. Has it been all smooth sailing? I'll be the first to tell you no. We've had some issues, and of course we are still treating with issues, but trust me, whilst Rome might be burning, the productive capacity of the PTA and the involvement, excitement, enthusiasm of our membership remain constant. And we continue to depend upon the involvement and the productivity of our members in order to see our PTA go for another 64 years. We plan to celebrate big next year, 2025, when we celebrate our 65th anniversary. Unfortunately, when we turned 60, 2020, as you all know, we were struck with COVID, and of course, our organization was, as it were, unable to have a big splash, a big celebration, but of course, in 2025, we plan to have that. Who were some of our leaders that have caused this organization to remain standing, to remain strong over the years? This executive that I have the pleasure to lead came into office on the 11th of November, 2023. Prior to my leadership, Mr. Kevin David controlled the organization as the president from April 22 to November of 23. There was an interregnum period, of course, where there was an interim committee that led the NPTA from 2019 to 2022, when Mr. Kevin David took up the leadership. I've always referred to Mr. David as coming into the organization and taking up the mantle at the worst time in the PTA's history. And of course, we continue to thank him for his leadership during this period. During the period prior to that, for about 2 years, we were struck in some legal matters. And of course, we were under the interim committee leadership of Mrs. Zina Ramatali, who needs no introduction, of course, to the PTA. As a matter of fact, Mrs. Zina Ramatali was the president of the NPTA from 2000 to 2017. She was almost sprung into leadership role at the death in office of our former president, Mr. Glenville Tate, MOM Gold, and of course, he was also a senator as well. He died in 2000, in December, and Mrs. Ramatali took up the leadership from 2000 to 2017. The first female president, the first female leader of the National PTA. Many call her the warrior princess by her very name. And of course, she has proven true to form, true to her name, that she was a warrior princess for the NPTA from the period 2000 to 2017. I want to pause now to turn over to Mrs. Janet Thomas, our National PRO, who is going to introduce our National Education Officer, Mrs. Ayana Leacock Sargent. Over to you, Mrs. Thomas. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Miss. Sorry, Miss Thomas, your microphone is muted.
Sorry about that. Good morning, Mr. Shaw. Good morning to my colleagues and to the viewers of the WESN. Thank you very much again for having us on this morning. Our president has done an amazing job in introducing the NPTA. We have a very vibrant team. The PTA has many different positions that helps all aspects of education, of parents, and of children. One of the aspects that we want to focus on this morning, as we would have mentioned in the last segment, that we would have been introducing the education officer who will be discussing education in PTA. And then next week, we're also going to have the welfare who's going to be talking about the role of welfare in PTA. So we know that there are very many benefits to having a PTA within your unit, and education is key. So this morning, I would like to take the opportunity to introduce our education officer. She is a shining star within the NPTA. She has brought a lot of her experience. One of the things that we're very proud of in this organization and in this new executive is that it is a mix. The executives themselves is a mix of persons who are qualified within their positions. That's one of the challenges that we would have had in the past, where persons necessarily hold positions that they're not qualified for. We are very happy that many of the members on this new executive that hold these respective positions are fully qualified for it, in addition to having a wealth of experience from members that our president just spoke of, from Mrs. Ramatali to Mr. Lindo, and even himself, Mr. Stewart, who would have been president in 2 regions in Trinidad and Tobago. We also have younger members that are on the ground, are actually units in schools, so they have first-hand information on a lot of the challenges that we're facing in Trinidad and Tobago. So that mix of experience as well as feet on the ground is what helping us push the organization forward. So in just 4 short months, we would have accomplished far more than you would have thought possible, just with the dedication and the team and the energies that we have put in together. But for this morning, I would like to single out our education officer, Mrs. Ayana Leacock Sargent, and she is going to really discuss with us about the role in education. So I will like to introduce her now, Mrs. Ayana Leacock.
Good morning, Mr. Shaw and members of the NPTA, Mrs. Janet Thomas and Mr. Walter Stewart, and the wider NPTA who's looking on. And of course, the wider public that is looking on, thank you for having me here. It is a pleasure. I have a few slides that I want to discuss. So I am going to share my screen.
Yes, Ms. Leacock, you can go ahead. We are able to see the presentation.
Yeah.
Yes, you go ahead.
Yes. So my task today is to discuss the role of the NPTA in education. What is my role as the education officer is collecting and sharing information on PTA developments, developing programs to educate and empower members on parenting issues, maintaining a file of news clippings and PTA-related materials, and fulfilling additional duties assigned by the executive committee. So those are just a summary of my role and function within the NPTA as the education officer. Parents' role in education, and this is a big one, a big topic. Being a role model for children to follow. Children normally would look up to their parents and model what their parents do. Helping the child with schoolwork. This is a not that some parents struggle with because of various reasons. Commute to work, commute back home, and several other things that may impact. But helping your child with schoolwork is a major role that parents need to also look into. Creating a conducive learning environment at home. We all know that there are some children that are in homes that are not conducive to learning, and it is imperative and important that children are in homes that are conducive to learning. And when they come to school, having been in homes that are conducive to learning, they usually work well, they produce good work, they are usually star students. Parental engagement in school life. And this is where being part of the PTA also is a big thing. And engaging with your child's teacher is also a big thing, because being engaged in your child's school life, you know exactly what's happening in the classroom, how your child is behaving, how your child is progressing. And those are important things that you would want to know to be able to successfully help your child at home. Parent-teacher interactions are vital. Engage in school activities when able. So schools may be having fundraisers, they may be having different activities, and it is good. Your child feels proud when they see mommy or daddy part of the activity at school. Read school communications. We all know that a lot of communications come home, whether it is through emails or through their PTC book, and parents don't read it. Sometimes you're asking them, did you see a particular note? And they're saying no. Communication is important. You must know what is happening within the school environment to be able to successfully help your child at home. So we would have heard Mr. Walter, our president, spoke about the life of a child from 5, which would be primary school, to secondary school. So I want to touch on preschool. Preschool is the foundation. What preschool does for a child? Fosters creativity and curiosity in the world that he or she lives in. Social skills, this is where children learn social skills because they're on the playground. So they learn to take turns. They learn to wait on their turn. They learn to ask for stuff. Language skills, this is where they move from babbling to forming sentences and structuring their sentences properly. This is where they develop cognitive skills, being able to think and critically analyze and solve problems. A lot of our students do not know how to communicate and solve problems. And it's here at the preschool foundation is where those cognitive problem-solving skills start from. Motor skills. Sometimes you see children come over into the primary school and their writing is, you asking yourself what went on. And it's here where motor skills in terms of forming your letters, holding a pencil properly, coloring within the line, building that motor skills to be able to write effectively in the primary school. And then you learn pre-literacy skills, your letter sounds, your numbers, putting things in groups, the letters of your name, and things like that. So tips on PTAs in schools, networking and support. Major ones. So we would have heard Mrs. Thomas and our president talk about the importance of PTAs in school. Networking and support is a major one. Information sharing. So if you know you did something with your child at home or children at home and it worked so well, this is where you can share the information on what you did to get your child to learn better or to behave better. Don't keep the information, you can share it. And there are advocacy, educational resources. If you know you have resources at home that you no longer want using, or you know worked well with your child's learning, here is a forum where you come and you share your information, you share your knowledge. Volunteer opportunities. You volunteer your time. Maybe the school is embarking upon an activity and your time in that activity is valuable. Volunteer. Then you have parent education. This is where the education officer comes in during meetings and educate the parents on new curriculum or new development in curriculum, and engagement and involvement. Be engaged, be involved. All of this is what builds a well-rounded child, a well-rounded student. And we must touch on reading. And according to Dr. Paul Skerrett, 2017, the Perils 2016 reading assessment focused on Standard 3. Grade 4 students in Trinidad and Tobago and 49 other countries. Reading scores increased, but not significantly. Despite improvement from 2001 to 2016, Trinidad and Tobago's score remained below the international average, which is 500. And this is concerning given investments in reading. We must read. Reading is an important skill. Reading builds vocabulary. Reading builds critical thinking. Reading builds analytical thinking. It builds problem-solving skills. So many things happen when children are able to read effectively, read with fluency. Perils assesses 4 broad-based comprehension processes within each of the 2 purposes for reading. That is, focus on and retrieve explicitly stated information, make straightforward inferences, interpret and integrate ideas and information, and evaluate and critique content and textual elements. This is a very important part. This connects to the SCA framework, the SCA entrance exam. When you look at the framework that speaks to reading comprehension, that speaks to literal questions and inferential questions and evaluation questions. The peril assessment 4-based comprehension process that falls straight right into the SEA assessment. And that's why I want to hammer the importance of reading with your child, reading. Let your child read to you. And reading doesn't always have to be around the table. It could be outside in the garden, outside, sitting and you're reading. And children now would move from reading for just reading's sake, but reading for information and retrieving information from a text or a passage or even a poem or MIL, media information literacy. And once children are able to read with fluency, you have children now acing mathematics because you have word problem that you need to read in order to solve. Science, social studies, ELA, component, vocabulary. So I make this appeal for parents at home to encourage more reading. So this is what the PIRLS statistics look like. And if you look, you would see Trinidad and Tobago where we are at and where we scored and where the benchmark. So there is a need for us to give more interest in reading. PTA meetings should have an education corner. Why? It is important. Because at that corner, educational information would be shared, updates, policies with parents. The corner encourages parental engagement in their child's academic journey, from preschool all the way to secondary school and even tertiary. Acts as a resource hub with educational materials for parents. Fosters community building and collaboration among parents and teachers and school staff. That collaboration, that triangle, parent, teacher, and child is important. When you have good communication with your teachers within a school, your child learning, your child grades are greatly improved and remain. Provides a platform for parental feedback and input on educational matters. Because parents don't have it all, teachers, the country doesn't have it all. So when we lean on each other to get information, if you know and I know, and other parents know, then we have a lot of notes. We have a lot of information. And therefore, we would have a bank of information to be able to pull from.
Yeah.
Thank you very much,
And
Mrs.
then I must touch on attendance.
One second. Thank you, Mrs. Peacock Sargent. Thank you
Yes.
so much. We have to continue this at another time. Before Mrs. Janet Thomas just brings closing remarks and thanks, let me, on behalf of the Trinidad and Tobago National Council of Parent Teacher Association, wish all our SEA students 2024 the very best. Parents, take it down a bit because I know that sometimes parents can be flustered more than the children, but we really want parents to take it down, make sure that you are calm, your children are calm, and students, do your very best. That's all we ask of you. Do your very best on Thursday, and we wish you God's blessings. Mrs. Thomas?
Thank you very much. And I would also like to mirror the sentiments of the president. So viewers, you can see that our education officer has a wealth of experience, and we weren't able to get everything that she was going to share, but we will definitely pick up on the topic next week. We do want to thank Mr. Shaw for having us here this morning. We would like to thank the viewers. We would like to thank our education officer for being here, and we do look forward to the next week's session and the week after, which we will go into welfare, and then the final session we will speak on the benefits of the PTA and actually bringing some functioning PTA units or executive members here to share their experiences with PTA. Right, so thank you very much, everyone. It was a pleasure being here as always.
Thank you very much to everyone from the NPTA for joining us on the program this morning, and thank you very much to Mr. Cox-Sargent for her presentation. Ms. Thomas, thank you very much for your presence once more. And Mr. Stewart, thank you very much for being with us and guiding us through this morning's segment. So we look forward to the next, which I believe is next week, Monday, at the same time.
Sure. Take
so
care.
thank you very much to all, and I share the well wishes on the part of the NPTA to all SEA students as well. The very best for you and to you in the exam on Thursday. And well, I'll tell you what, the best time comes right after when that bell hits and the exam is done.
So true.
Looking forward to that. Ladies and gentlemen, we take a break here on AM Prime. When we return, the conversations continue. We'll be right back.